The hospital light was cold, white, relentless. I could feel it piercing through my closed eyelids, but I forced myself to keep them that way, motionless, as if I were truly trapped somewhere deep within my own mind, unable to return. The hum of the air conditioning was constant, monotonous. I had learned to count the seconds between each cycle, 16 seconds exactly, 16 seconds of relative silence before the motor would softly roar again. I had been like this for 3 days. 3 days pretending to be in a coma. 3 days waiting for my family to prove they loved me, that they needed me, that my life meant something more than the bills I paid, the meals I prepared, the problems I solved. 3 days that had felt like an eternity. It had all started with a stupid argument, so stupid that now, lying in this hospital bed with starched sheets that smelled of bleach and loneliness, I could barely remember the exact details. Something about dinner, about how no one had thanked me for the meal, about how Laura, my 25-year-old daughter, had arrived late again without notice, about how Roberto, my husband of 30 years, hadn't even looked up from his phone. What am I good for in this family? I had asked that night. No one had answered. Laura had gone up to her room. Roberto had turned on the television. And I had stood there, in the kitchen, with my hands wet from washing dishes, feeling something inside me break. It wasn't a dramatic break. There were no screams or tears. It was silent, like when a branch breaks in winter and the sound is muffled by the snow. The next day I had the idea. A terrible idea. Desperate, but I couldn't get it out of my head. What would happen if I disappeared? If something happened to me, how would they react? I had called my sister Monica, the only person in the world I truly trusted. I need your help. I had told her, and it's going to sound completely crazy. Monica was a nurse. She worked at General Hospital, in the intensive care wing. When I explained my plan, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. You're being serious, she had said finally. It wasn't a question. Completely. Clara, this is insane. I know. Another silence. What did Roberto do to you? What did Laura do? Nothing. I had responded, and it was true. Absolutely nothing. That's the problem. Monica had sighed. I could imagine her sitting in her kitchen, running her hand through the brown hair she always wore in a ponytail. How long? She had asked. I don't know. A few days. I need to know. If they find out, they won't. Not if you help me. And that's how it all began. Monica had falsified the records. She had spoken with a couple of trusted colleagues. She had prepared everything to make it look like I had suffered a minor car accident, a blow to the head, and that I had entered a coma state induced by the trauma. I'm going to connect you to real monitors, she had explained. Your family will be able to visit you, but the room will have hidden cameras and microphones. You'll be able to hear everything, see everything. When you want to leave, just move. Any deliberate movement, and I'll enter immediately. Thank you, I had whispered, hugging her tightly. Don't thank me yet, she had responded. Something tells me this isn't going to end the way you expect. She was right. God, how right she was. The first day had been almost tolerable. Roberto had arrived around 3 in the afternoon. I could hear his footsteps before seeing him, that heavy walk he had developed in recent years, when he stopped exercising and began spending all his nights in front of the television. He had sat in the chair next to my bed. For several minutes he said nothing. I could feel his presence, the smell of his cologne, the one I had given him for Christmas and that he only used occasionally, the sound of his breathing, slightly labored from having climbed the stairs. Clara, he had said finally, and his voice sounded tired. I don't know if you can hear me. I had to concentrate on keeping my breathing stable, on not moving a single muscle. The doctors say you might, that maybe you're in there somewhere. So, I'm going to talk, just in case. He paused. I heard the creak of the chair when he settled in. This is a disaster, he continued. A complete disaster. The car was destroyed. Insurance will cover most of it, but still, and work. I had to ask for time off. I don't know how long I can be without going. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Was that what worried him? The car? Work? Laura is devastated, he added, and for the first time I detected something like emotion in his voice. She's barely eaten. She's in the cafeteria now, trying to calm down. That comforted me a little. At least Laura was suffering. At least she cared. I need you to wake up, Roberto said, and now his voice sounded rougher. I need you to come back, because frankly, Clara, I don't know how to handle all this without you. He stayed a few more minutes in silence, then he got up and left the room. When the door closed, I let out a long, trembling sigh. Monica came in almost immediately after, checking my vital signs with professional and efficient movements. Are you okay? She whispered. I nodded slightly. Do you want me to end this? I shook my head. This is just beginning, I murmured. She squeezed my hand. I'm your sister and I love you, but I'm also a nurse, and this is killing me. If at any moment it's too much. I know, I interrupted. I know. Laura arrived that night. I could hear her crying before she entered the room. Muffled sobs, broken, the kind of crying that comes from a deep, visceral place. My heart accelerated. I had to remind myself to breathe normally. The door opened. Mom, Laura whispered, and her voice was broken. Mom, I'm so sorry. She sat in the chair Roberto had occupied before. She took my hand. Her fingers were cold and trembling. I'm so sorry, she repeated. Sorry for being so horrible lately. Sorry for not being there. Sorry for not saying thank you for dinner. Sorry for everything. Tears ran down my closed cheeks. I couldn't help it, but they were mixed with her tears falling on my hand. You have to wake up, she said. Please, you have to wake up because there are so many things I need to tell you. So many things I've been keeping inside. She stayed there for hours. She talked about her work, about her boyfriend Matteo, with whom she had been having problems, about how lost she felt sometimes, about how she wished she could talk to me like they did when she was a little girl. Do you remember when I was 9 and fell off my bike? She asked through tears. I broke my arm and I was so scared, but you stayed with me all night at the hospital. You didn't sleep at all. You just sat next to my bed and held my good hand. You told me stories until I fell asleep. I remembered. Of course I remembered. I need you to do that again, she whispered. I need you to stay with me, to wake up, because I'm the one who's scared now, Mom, and I don't know what to do without you. When she finally left, after midnight, I allowed myself to cry, silent tears that soaked the pillow. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe Laura did love me. Maybe Roberto did too, in his clumsy, practical way. Maybe I should end this now. Wake up, hug them, tell them I love them. But something stopped me. A little voice in my head that whispered, wait, just one more day, just to be sure. The second day changed everything. Roberto arrived early, around 10 in the morning. He wasn't alone. It'll just be a moment, I heard him saying in the hallway. I just want to see her quickly. Of course, responded a female voice I didn't recognize. They entered together. I kept my breathing absolutely stable, my eyes perfectly closed. This is Clara, Roberto said, and there was something strange in his tone, something casual, as if he were showing a painting in a museum, not his wife in a coma. Poor woman, said the female voice. Closer now. How long do they say she could be like this? They don't know. Days, weeks, maybe more. It must be very difficult for you. It is, Roberto responded, and he sighed deeply. It's terrible, Valeria. You don't know how much. Valeria. The name resonated in my mind. Valeria. Who was Valeria? At least you have your daughter, Valeria said. Yes. Laura has been, well, she's been very affected, but she's also been a help, especially with all the paperwork. Paperwork. Insurance things, medical documents, and, well, other legal matters that need to be reviewed. Just in case. My heart was beating so hard I was sure the monitors would give it away. But Monica had been smart. She had adjusted the alarm so a wider range would be considered normal. Just in case, Valeria repeated softly. Roberto didn't respond immediately. I heard footsteps. He had moved away from the bed. It's just precaution, he said finally. You never know how these things will turn out. Of course. There was an uncomfortable silence. We should go, Roberto said. I don't want Laura to arrive, and well, you know. I understand. They left. I stayed there with my heart beating painfully against my ribs, trying to process what I had just heard. Paperwork, legal matters, and who the hell was Valeria? Monica came in half an hour later. Did you hear that? She asked in a low voice. Yes. Do you want me to investigate? Please. She nodded and left. Laura arrived around 2. This time she wasn't crying. In fact, she sounded calm, almost cheerful. Hi, Mom, she said, kissing my forehead. How are you today? She sat down and took out her phone. I could hear the sound of her nails tapping on the screen. Matteo and I talked last night, she said while typing. About our plans, for the future. She kept typing. We've been thinking about moving in together, to a bigger place, maybe buying something instead of renting. You always said it was a good idea to invest in property. Remember? More typing. The problem is money, obviously. A down payment for a decent apartment is, well, it's a lot, but we've been running numbers, and maybe it's possible, soon. Something in her tone made me feel nauseous. Anyway, she continued, putting away her phone. The doctors say you're stable, that it's a good sign, although they also said it could take time. A long time. She paused. You know what's craziest? I was checking your bank accounts yesterday. Dad asked me to make sure all the automatic payments were in order, and I realized something I had never noticed before. My breathing wanted to accelerate, but I forced it to stay constant. You have a lot saved, Mom. Much more than I thought. Between your savings, investments, life insurance, the house, it's quite a bit of money. I hadn't thought about that before, that someday all of that, well. She stopped. The silence stretched. Not that I'm waiting for anything, she added quickly. Of course not. It's strange, to think about these things, about the future, about how things can change so fast. She stayed a few more minutes, talking about trivialities. The weather, her work, a new series she was watching. But I was no longer listening. I could only think about her words. Much more than I thought. Someday all of that. The third day, Laura and Roberto came together. It was 4 in the afternoon. I could hear their voices from the hallway, speaking in low tones. They entered the room and closed the door behind them. For a moment, neither said anything. Then Roberto spoke. Did you talk to the lawyer? Yes, Laura responded. Yesterday afternoon. And? He said we need documents, power of attorney, access to the accounts. Everything has to be in order before anything happens. I already did some of the papers, Roberto said. The ones for the house, the investments, but the bank accounts are missing. I have them, Laura said. I found all the information on her laptop. The passwords were in a file. Good. That's good. There was a pause. Do you feel bad about this? Laura asked. And for the first time I heard something like doubt in her voice. Bad, Roberto repeated. We're being practical, Laura. That's all. Your mother would want us to be prepared. I know, but nothing. This doesn't mean we don't love her. It means we're responsible. Another silence. The doctor said she could be like this for months, Roberto continued. Do you know how much this costs per day? The hospital, the care, everything. And we don't even know if she's going to wake up. Don't say that. It's the truth. And someone has to say it. Someone has to think about the practical. I suppose you're right. Of course I'm right. And when all this is over, when we can finally move forward, at least we'll be prepared. At least we won't have to worry about money. Move forward, Laura repeated. You know what I mean. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I know. They stayed a few more minutes. Roberto checked his phone. Laura painted her nails, as if they were in any waiting room, not next to the bed of their supposedly comatose wife and mother. When they left, I closed my eyes so tightly they hurt. Monica came in shortly after. Clara. I know, I said, opening my eyes. I know what you're going to say. Then let me end this. You already saw what you needed to see. Not yet. What more do you want? For them to tell you directly to your face that they're waiting for you to die? I laughed. It was a bitter laugh, without humor. Maybe yes, I responded. Maybe that's exactly what I need to hear. Monica sat on the edge of the bed. I investigated Valeria, she said. She's Roberto's secretary at his office. They have a relationship. For almost a year. Of course they did. Any other good news? I asked, and my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. Laura has been looking at apartments online, places that easily cost $500,000 for a down payment, and Mateo just quit his job. He's planning to open a business. With what money? Monica didn't respond. She didn't need to. One more day, I said. Give me one more day. Clara. Please. She sighed. One more day, but after that, you end this. Do you promise me? I promise. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counted breaths, listened to the endless hum of the air conditioning. I thought about 30 years of marriage, about thousands of meals prepared, about nights helping with homework, about celebrated birthdays, about forgotten anniversaries, about I love yous that stopped being said, about kisses that became mechanical, about conversations that turned into silences. I thought about little Laura, the one who hugged me when she had nightmares, the one who brought me flowers from the garden, the one who said she wanted to be like me when she grew up. When had everything changed? Or had it never been real to begin with? The fourth day arrived with a gentle rain tapping against the window. Roberto came alone, early in the morning. He sat next to my bed and said nothing for a long time. Then he began to talk. You know, Clara, sometimes I think about how we used to be, when we first got married. Do you remember that horrible apartment where we lived, with walls so thin we could hear the neighbors arguing? He paused. We were happy there, or at least I thought we were. Maybe you were also just pretending even then. I felt something twist in my chest. I don't know when we stopped being us, he continued. When we stopped really talking, laughing, touching each other without it just being routine. His voice broke slightly. And now you're here, and I'm with Valeria, and Laura is planning her life with your money, and everything is a complete disaster. He leaned forward, resting his head in his hands. Part of me wishes you would wake up right now, that you would yell at me, that you would tell me I'm an idiot and a bad husband, because that would be better than this silence, this waiting. He lifted his head. But another part of me, another part thinks that maybe this is an exit from something that stopped working years ago, an opportunity to start over. He stood up. The doctors say they need to make decisions soon, about your long-term care, about other things. And I don't know what to do, Clara. Honestly, I don't know. He left the room. I heard him crying in the hallway. And for the first time since all this began, I felt something like compassion for him, mixed with the rage, with the pain, with everything. Laura arrived at noon. This time she brought Mateo with her. It'll just be a moment, she was telling him as they entered. I just want you to see her. Are you sure? Mateo responded. I feel weird being here. She's my mother, Mateo, and you're going to be part of the family. They approached the bed. Mom, Laura said, this is Mateo. You already know him, obviously, but, well, I wanted to bring him. Hello, Mrs. Vega, Mateo said awkwardly. I hope you can hear me. Laura talks a lot about you. Sit down, Laura said. I heard the sound of chairs being dragged. So, Mateo asked after a moment. When can we? Soon, Laura interrupted. My dad is arranging everything with the lawyers. He says in a week or two we should have full access. And her, Mateo's voice lowered. What if she wakes up? She's not going to wake up. How do you know? The doctor said so. The brain damage it's severe. Even if she wakes up, she won't be the same person. That's horrible. It is, Laura agreed, and she sounded genuinely sad. But it's also reality, and we have to be realistic about the future. I suppose so. There was a pause. Do you still want the space on Reforma Avenue? Laura asked. Yes, it's perfect for what I have planned, but the deposit is… I know, it's a lot, but when we have the money, it'll be enough, for the space, for the apartment, for everything. Laura, this feels wrong. She's your mom, and she would want us to be happy. Laura responded firmly. She would want us to take advantage of opportunities to live well. How can you be so sure? Because I knew her. Because I'm her daughter. The silence that followed was long and heavy. We should go, Matteo said finally. This place makes me nervous. Okay, just give me a moment. I heard Matteo leave. Laura stayed. Mom, she whispered. I know this seems terrible. I know if you can hear me, you're probably, I don't know, disappointed, angry. But you have to understand, all my life you've worked so hard, you've sacrificed so much. And for what? You know, for a house where no one is really happy, for a marriage that's dead, for a daughter who was never enough for you. Her voice broke. Because that's what I've always felt, that no matter how hard I tried, I was never enough, never as organized as you, as responsible, as perfect. Tears, I could hear them in her voice. So maybe you're right to judge me now. Maybe I'm horrible for thinking about the money, for planning my future while you're here. But at least I'm being honest about what I want. At least I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. She stood up. I love you, Mom, in my way, but I also need to live my own life. And if that makes me selfish, then I guess I'm selfish. The door closed. I stayed there, trembling. All the careful control over my breathing, over my muscles, threatened to crumble. Monica came in. Enough, she said. It's been enough. Not yet. Clara. I said not yet. My voice came out louder than I intended. I need to know how this ends. You already know how it ends. You've heard enough. No, there's something more. I can feel it. Monica stared at me for a long moment. You're destroying yourself with this. I was already destroyed, I responded. I just needed to see it. That afternoon, Roberto and Laura came back together. They brought papers. Are you sure this is legal? Roberto asked as they entered. The lawyer said yes. With the medical documents and the power of attorney, we can start moving things. And no one is going to ask questions? Why would they ask questions? It's completely normal for the family to handle the affairs of someone who's like this. They sat next to my bed. I need you to sign here, Laura said, and I heard the sound of papers moving. And here, and here. What is all this? Transfers, access to the accounts, changes to the policies. Laura, this feels... It's just precaution, Dad. To protect us, just in case. Just in case what? Laura didn't respond immediately. Just in case she doesn't wake up, she said finally. Just in case we have to make difficult decisions. We can't talk about that here, Roberto whispered. Why not? She can't hear us. The doctors said so. Still. Okay. But sign the papers. We need to move them before Friday. Why Friday? Because that's when the deadline for Matteo's space deposit expires and for the apartment down payment. This is too fast. It's the perfect opportunity. We can't let it pass. I heard Roberto sigh. Okay, give me the pen. The sound of signing. Once, twice, 3 times. Done, Roberto said. Happy? Grateful, Laura responded. Really, Dad, this means a lot. Yeah, well, I hope you know what you're doing. I do. Trust me. They stayed a few more minutes, talking about logistical details, about bank accounts, about numbers, about deadlines. As if I were a business to liquidate, not a person, not a wife, not a mother. When they left, Monica came in and found me with my eyes open, tears running down my cheeks. I've heard enough, I said. Thank God. But I'm still not going to wake up. What? I sat up in the bed. My whole body protested after 3 days of immobility. I need a phone, I said. And I need you to bring me some clothes, and I need you to trust me a little longer. Clara, what are you planning? I looked directly into her eyes. Justice, I responded. I'm planning justice. The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Monica, though clearly worried, helped me. She always helped me. She brought clothes, a phone, a laptop. While she monitored Roberto and Laura from the cameras, I worked. I called my own lawyer, Ernesto Campos, someone Roberto and Laura didn't know, someone who had discreetly handled my financial affairs for years. "Mrs. Vega," he said when he answered. "What a surprise to receive your call. Is everything okay?" "No, Ernesto. Nothing is okay, but I need your help." I explained everything. Every word I had heard, every signature they had forged, every plan they had made. There was a long silence when I finished. "My God," he murmured. "Clara, this is fraud, abuse of power of attorney. If what you're telling me is true, we could press criminal charges." "I don't want criminal charges," I said. "I want something better." "What do you have in mind?" I told him. When I finished, Ernesto laughed. It wasn't a joyful laugh, but one of pure dark admiration. "It's brilliant," he said, "and completely devastating. Can you do it?" "Give me 24 hours. "You have them." I hung up and looked at Monica. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "More sure than I've been about anything in my life." That night, Roberto arrived with Valeria. They didn't bother being discreet this time. "I just wanted you to see where I work during the day," Roberto was saying as they entered. "Where I spend so much time." "It's depressing," Valeria responded softly. "This whole place, the way it smells, the sounds." "I know, but soon I won't have to come anymore." "What do you mean?" Roberto approached my bed. I could feel his presence closer than he had been in days. "The doctors talked to me this afternoon," he said. "They said they're considering options for long-term care." "What kind of options?" "Basically, moving her to a long-term care facility, or making decisions about suspending certain treatments." "Roberto," Valeria's voice sounded surprised. "That sounds like—" "I know how it sounds, but it's not that. It's just being practical. She's not going to wake up, Valeria. And keeping her here, in this state, indefinitely, it doesn't make sense." "And Laura agrees?" "Laura agrees. In fact, she was the one who suggested it first." There was a pause. "When will you make the decision?" Valeria asked. "Soon. Very soon. And after we can start thinking about the future. Our future. I can't believe we're talking about this here, next to her." "She can't hear us," Roberto said, and his voice was so sure, so firm. "The doctors confirmed it. There's no significant brain activity. It's just a body breathing. There's no one in there anymore." Something inside me broke in that moment. Not from sadness, not from pain. From a cold, crystalline fury that was clearer than anything I had felt before. "We should go," Valeria said. "This feels wrong." "You're right, let's go." I heard their footsteps walking away. The door opening, closing. The silence that followed was absolute. Monica came in minutes later and found me sitting on the bed, completely still, staring at the wall. "Clara, there's no one in there anymore," I repeated softly. "That's what he said." I heard. 30 years. 30 years of marriage. A daughter I raised from birth, and to them I'm just an empty body. An obstacle. A bank account to liquidate. "Clara." "Tomorrow," I said, turning to look at her. "Tomorrow it all ends. What are you going to do?" "Wake up," I responded. But not the way they expect. The morning of the 5th day dawned clear and bright. Roberto arrived early. Laura arrived shortly after. They came together, as they had planned. I was ready. Monica had prepared everything according to my instructions. Ernesto was on his way with the documents, and I was lying in that hospital bed, waiting for the perfect moment. The doctors said they would come at 10. Laura was saying as they entered, to discuss the options. "Are you ready for this?" Roberto asked. "As ready as I can be. It's the right thing, isn't it? It's what she would have wanted." "Of course. Clara never would have wanted to live like this, without quality of life, without hope of recovery." They sat next to my bed. "Did you sign the last papers?" Laura asked. "Yesterday afternoon. Now we have full access to everything." "Good. Matteo said he can close the deal on the space this Friday if we transfer the deposit before noon." "And the apartment?" "It's also ready. We're just waiting for final credit approval." "Everything is going according to plan," Roberto said, and he sounded relieved. "Finally, something is going right." "Dad," Laura said after a moment, "do you ever feel—" "I don't know," Guilty? Why would I feel guilty? For all this, for moving forward so quickly. Roberto sighed. Laura, your mother and I haven't been happy in years. You know that. We all knew it. This is sad, yes. But it's also, in a way, a relief. A relief? From the pretense. From pretending we were a happy family when we weren't. From being trapped in something that died a long time ago. Laura didn't respond immediately. I suppose you're right, she said finally. And she wasn't perfect either. Always judging. Always making me feel inadequate. Exactly. So no, I don't feel guilty. I feel liberated. It was at that moment that I decided to wake up. Not dramatically, not with screams or sudden movements. I simply opened my eyes. Roberto noticed first. Clara, he whispered, and his voice was full of shock. Clara, are you? Laura jumped to her feet, her chair falling backward with a crash. Mom, oh my God, Mom. I moved my head slowly, looking at both of them. Their faces were a study in pure panic. How long? I asked, and my voice came out hoarse, raspy. How long have you been awake? I didn't respond. I just looked at them. Clara, Roberto said, approaching. Thank God. We thought you would never. I heard you, I said softly. He froze. What? Everything, I continued. Every word, every conversation, every plan. The color drained from Laura's face. Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, I interrupted. Of course you do. Roberto took a step back. Clara, if you heard something, you must understand that we were under a lot of pressure, that we weren't thinking clearly. Oh, I think you were thinking very clearly, I said. About the inheritance, about the bank accounts, about the apartment and Mateo's space, about Valeria. Roberto paled. Valeria? Your secretary, your lover, the woman you plan to start your life with once I'm conveniently out of the way. It's not what you think, isn't it? Because I think it's exactly what it seems like. An unfaithful husband and a greedy daughter waiting for their wife and mother to die so they can collect the insurance. Laura began to cry. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We didn't want it to happen like this. We were just being practical. Practical? I repeated, and my voice rose in volume. You would call practical signing fraudulent documents? Planning to suspend my treatment? Dividing my money while I'm still alive? Clara, please. Shut up, Roberto, I screamed. I've heard enough from you these last few days. Enough for a lifetime. The door opened and Monica entered, followed by Ernesto and 2 police officers. Roberto and Laura froze. What? What's happening? Roberto stammered. What's happening? Ernesto said in a professional and cold voice. Is that Mrs. Vega is pressing charges for attempted fraud, forgery of documents, and abuse of power of attorney. Everything has been recorded. Every conversation, every illegal signature, everything. You can't do this, Laura said, her voice rising hysterically. She was in a coma. She couldn't be conscious. But she wasn't in a coma, was she? Ernesto said. She was perfectly conscious, and you, in your greed, never bothered to really verify. Roberto turned to me. You faked it? This whole time you faked being in a coma? Yes, I responded simply. I wanted to see who you really were, what you would do if you thought there were no consequences, and you showed me exactly that. You're a psychopath, Laura whispered. What kind of person would do something like that? The kind of person who needed to know the truth, I responded, and now I know it. The officers approached. Mr. Vega, Miss Vega, you're going to have to come with us, one of them said. This is crazy, Roberto shouted. You can't arrest us. We're her family. Precisely because of that, Ernesto said. Family fraud is particularly serious under the law. Mom, Laura turned to me, tears running down her face. Mom, please, don't do this. I'm your daughter, your only daughter. I looked at her, this 25-year-old woman I had raised, to whom I had given everything. And I was your mother, I responded. But that didn't mean anything to you when you thought you could collect my life insurance. We didn't want you to die. No, I agreed. You just wanted my money, which in a way is worse. The officers began to escort them toward the door. This isn't over, Roberto shouted. I'll get a lawyer. I'll fight this. Please, try, I said. Ernesto has recordings of everything, illegally signed documents, evidence of adultery that will affect any claim you might have on marital assets. You have nothing. The door closed behind them. The silence that followed was deafening. Monica approached and sat on the edge of the bed. How do you feel? She asked softly. I don't know, I responded honestly. Empty, triumphant, shattered all at once. You did the right thing. Did I? I looked at her. I destroyed my family. I sent my husband and my daughter to face criminal charges. Is that right? They destroyed themselves, Ernesto said. You just revealed what was already there. Maybe he was right. Or maybe we were all wrong. In the days that followed, the story became public. The media went crazy with the news. Woman fakes coma to discover family's plans. I was on every newscast. I went viral on social media. Some called me a hero. Others called me vengeful, sick, manipulative. Maybe I was all those things. Roberto hired a lawyer, as he had threatened, but the recordings were irrefutable. Ernesto had done his job well. Every conversation had been legally documented, recorded with my consent, in a controlled medical environment. The case was solid as a rock. Laura came to see me a week later. I was home by then, in the house I now inhabited alone, the house that had once been a home and was now just a museum of bitter memories. I opened the door, and she was there. Dark circles under her eyes, thinner, wearing wrinkled clothes. Can I come in? She asked. For a moment I considered saying no, closing the door in her face like she had closed her heart to mine. But I stepped aside. We went into the living room, the same place where I had prepared thousands of dinners, where we had celebrated Christmases, where, once upon a time, we had been a family. Matteo left me, Laura said without preamble, sitting on the couch. When he found out about everything, he said he couldn't be with someone so calculating. I didn't respond. I lost my job too. They said it was for public relations, that having someone involved in a scandal like this was bad for their image. I remained silent. And Dad won't even talk to me. He says it's all my fault, that I convinced him to do the papers, to plan everything. And did you? I asked. Laura looked at me, and her eyes were red and swollen. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I did. Happy. No, I responded honestly. Not at all happy. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a gesture she had made since she was a child. Why did you do it, Mom? Why did you fake it? Why didn't you just, I don't know, talk to us? Tell us how you felt. Because I had tried, I responded. For years, and no one was listening. You never said anything. I said everything, constantly. But you were never really present to listen. Laura looked down. What's going to happen now? She asked. With the charges, with everything. That depends on you, I said. Ernesto says I can drop the charges if I want, that I have that option. Her head snapped up. Would you? I don't know, I responded honestly. Part of me wants you to pay for what you did, to face the consequences. And the other part? The other part just wants all this to end, to be able to move forward with my life, whatever that means now. Laura stood up. If you drop the charges, she said, I promise you'll never see me again. I'll leave. I'll disappear from your life completely. So you can start over without the reminder of what I did. I looked at her. My daughter. The baby I had held in my arms. The girl I had taught to read. The teenager I had consoled through heartbreaks. Is that what you want? I asked. To disappear? It's what I deserve. Maybe, I said. Or maybe you deserve something worse, or something better. Honestly, Laura, I don't know anymore what anyone deserves. She walked toward the door, but stopped with her hand on the doorknob. Did you ever love me? She asked without turning around. Really, I mean, not as a mother because she's supposed to, but, really? The question hit me like a fist. Of course I loved you. I responded, and my voice broke. Of course I did. I loved you more than anything in this world. I loved you so much. It hurt, and maybe that was part of the problem, that I loved so much I forgot to teach you how to love back." Laura turned. Tears were running freely down her face now. "I'm sorry," she said. "For everything. For not being the daughter you deserved. For being selfish and greedy and horrible. I'm so sorry, Mom." "Me too," I whispered. "I'm sorry too." She left. The door closed softly behind her. And I stood there, in my empty living room, in my empty house, in my empty life, wondering if I had won or lost. Maybe both. Maybe neither. That night I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea I had no intention of drinking. Monica had come to visit me, worried that I was alone. "Are you going to drop the charges?" she asked. "Probably," I responded. "Not because they deserve it, but because I'm tired. Tired of fighting, tired of fighting, tired of being angry." "That's understandable." "Did I do the right thing, Monica?" "At the beginning, I mean, faking the coma." My sister considered the question carefully. "You did what you needed to do to find the truth," she said finally. "Whether that was right or not, honestly, I don't think there's a simple answer. I destroyed my family. They were destroying themselves. You just accelerated the inevitable." She took my hand. "But now you have an opportunity that many people never get. The opportunity to start completely over, to build a life you really want, without faking, without pretending. Just being you." "I don't even know who I am without them," I admitted. "I've been a wife and mother for so long I forgot how to be just Clara." "Then it's time you found out." I smiled weakly. "How do I do that at 52 years old?" "The same way you would at any age, one day at a time." She stayed with me that night, and the next, and the next. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I dropped the charges against Roberto and Laura, on the condition that Roberto sign the divorce papers without fighting, and that Laura seek professional help. Both accepted. I sold the house. Too many memories. Too many ghosts. I bought a small apartment near the beach, a place that was completely mine. I took painting classes, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for. I made new friends, people who knew me only as Clara, not as someone's wife or someone's mother, and slowly, painfully, I began to heal. But the nights were difficult. At night, when the apartment was quiet and the ocean roared outside, I found myself thinking about them. About Roberto, probably with Valeria now, living the life he had planned. About Laura, somewhere, trying to piece together the broken pieces of her life. And I wondered if any of them thought about me. If they missed me. If they regretted it. If they had ever really loved me. 6 months after the coma incident, I received a letter. It was from Laura. I held it in my hands for hours before opening it, my heart beating painfully. Finally, I opened it. "Dear Mom, I don't know if you'll read this, I don't know if you want to hear from me, but I need to write it anyway. I've been in therapy, as I promised, and it's been revealing, painful, necessary. My therapist made me see things about myself. I didn't want to admit that I've lived my entire life feeling like I was never enough, that I turned that feeling into resentment, into selfishness, into cruelty. That when I had the opportunity to take what I thought I deserved, I didn't even consider what I was doing, who I was hurting. I want to say I was young, that I was foolish, that I didn't know what I was doing. But I did know. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I did it anyway. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that I'm sorry, with every fiber of my being. I'm sorry. And I want you to know that every day I work to be better, to be the person I should have been from the beginning. The person you tried to teach me to be. I love you, Mom. I always loved you. I just did it wrong. I did everything wrong. Laura. I cried when I finished reading. I cried for the daughter I had raised. I cried for the woman she had become. I cried for everything we had lost. And I cried for the small, tiny seed of hope the letter planted in my heart. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But I kept the letter. I put it in the drawer of my nightstand, next to the few precious things I had kept from my old life. And I moved forward. I painted. I walked on the beach. I made friends. I lived. And some nights, when the pain was too much, I allowed myself to take out the letter and read it again. Wondering, hoping, doubting. Because that's the truth about family love. I discovered it's not simple, it's not clean, it's not like in the movies. It's complicated and painful and beautiful and terrible, all at the same time. It's faking being in a coma and listening to your family plan your funeral. It's discovering that the people you love are capable of unimaginable cruelty. It's also discovering that even after all that, some part of you still loves them, still hopes, still wonders if maybe, just maybe, there's a way back. 1 year after, I was on the beach when I saw someone familiar walking toward me. Laura. She looked different, thinner, with shorter hair, expression lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She stopped a few meters away. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "Hi, Laura. Can I sit?" I nodded. She sat in the sand next to me, close enough to touch, but not doing so. For a long time, neither of us said anything. We just watched the ocean, the waves breaking, the sun beginning to set. "I received your letter," I said finally. "I know. Monica told me." "You've been talking to Monica?" "She reached out a few months ago. She said she thought that maybe I was ready to hear how you were doing. If I wanted to share, and did you want to?" "Yes. I needed to talk to someone who knew you, who knew me, who knew the whole mess." I nodded slowly. "How have you been?" I asked. "Better, worse, different," she responded. "I got a new job. Nothing fancy. I work at a coffee shop. But it's honest, and I like it. I'm glad. And Matteo and I, we didn't get back together. But we talk sometimes, as friends. That's something. That's a lot." Another pause. "Dad married Valeria," she said, "last month." I felt a pang, but smaller than I expected. "How do you feel about that?" "Sad. Angry. But also relieved, I think, that at least he's being honest about what he wants now." "Yes, at least that." Laura took a deep breath. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I know I don't have it, not after what I did." "Then why did you come?" She turned to look at me, and her eyes were bright with tears. "Because you're my mom," she said simply. "And I miss you, and I thought that maybe if you miss me too, even a little bit, maybe we could, I don't know, start something new, something different, not like before, because before was broken, but something real." I looked at her, this woman who was my daughter, this stranger I knew better than myself, this complicated mess of humanity I had helped create. "I miss you," I admitted. "God, I miss you so much, even after everything, even when I don't want to." "Me too," she whispered. "I miss you too." And there, on that beach, as the sun sank into the horizon, we hugged. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It wasn't complete reconciliation. Maybe it never would be. But it was a beginning. A small, fragile, uncertain beginning. But it was ours. And for now, that was enough. Because I discovered something in those months of solitude and healing. That love isn't all or nothing. That families break and reassemble in strange and imperfect ways. That you can be broken and whole at the same time. That you can forgive without forgetting. That you can love someone and still protect yourself from them. That the truth, however painful, is better than the most comfortable lie. And that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close your eyes and pretend to be asleep. To finally wake up to the life you deserve. Epilogue. 2 years later, Laura and I had coffee together every Sunday. We didn't talk about the past often. When we did, it was painful, but necessary. She was still in therapy. I started going too. We were getting to know each other again, as people, not just as mother and daughter. It was strange. It was uncomfortable. It was beautiful. Roberto and Valeria divorced after 8 months. Monica told me he asked about me. I told her I wasn't ready for that conversation. Maybe I never would be. And that was okay. I was painting more. I sold my first piece last month for only $200, but it was mine. My art, my vision, my truth. Laura came to the small exhibition. She cried when she saw the painting. It was of a woman with her eyes closed, floating in dark water. But above her, barely visible, was a sky full of stars. "It's beautiful, Mom," she said. "Thank you," I responded. And it was the truth. Because even in the deepest darkness, the stars shine. Even when you pretend to sleep, you eventually wake up. And sometimes, just sometimes, what you find when you open your eyes is worth all the pain it took to get there. 3 years after the day I faked being in a coma, I woke up in my apartment by the sea with the sound of waves as background music. The sun came through the window, golden and warm. And for the first time in decades, I felt at peace. Laura would come to visit me that afternoon. She would bring her new partner, a woman named Sophia, who made her laugh for real. They had invited me to dinner with them next month. I said yes. The divorce papers with Roberto were finalized. He had moved to another city with a new woman, not Valeria. We had spoken once on the phone, 6 months ago. It was brief, cordial, closed. "I'm sorry," he had said, "for everything." "Me too," I responded, and I meant it. Not for having loved him badly, but for having lost myself in the process. Monica was still my rock, my sister, my savior. We had dinner together twice a week. She had taught me to laugh again, to trust again. My small art studio was growing. I had 3 students now, people who wanted to learn to see the world through color and form. I taught them, but they also taught me to live in the present, not to fear the future, to let go of the past. I got up from the bed and walked to the window. The ocean stretched infinitely before me, and I thought about that woman I had been, the one who faked being in a coma because she was so afraid of the truth that she needed to create an elaborate lie to face it. The one who discovered her family saw her as an obstacle, not as a person. The one who broke into 1,000 pieces in that hospital bed. And I thought about the woman I was now. Stronger, more alone, yes, but also more complete. Because I learned that being alone isn't the same as being empty. That you can lose a family and still find a home. That true love isn't the kind that never hurts you, but the kind that chooses to heal and grow after the damage. The phone rang. It was Laura. "Hi, Mom," she said, and her voice sounded light, happy. "Are we still good for today? Sophia is nervous about meeting you." "Tell her I'm nervous too," I responded, smiling. "But yes, we're still good." 6 o'clock? Perfect. "I love you, Mom." A pause. Those words used to be automatic, words that were said without thinking, without feeling. Now when Laura said them, I could hear the weight behind them, the meaning, the truth. "I love you too," I responded. "See you soon." I hung up, and I stood there watching the ocean, feeling the sun on my skin, remembering everything that had happened, everything I had lost, everything I had gained. It hadn't been easy. God, it hadn't been easy at all, but it had been real. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The truth, however brutal, had freed me. The fake coma had awakened me to my real life. And although the path had been full of pain and betrayal and tears, it had taken me exactly where I needed to be. Here. Now. Finally. Completely, painfully alive. I took a deep breath, feeling the salty air fill my lungs. And I let go of everything I no longer needed to carry. The resentment, the bitterness, the question of what if. Because I already knew the answer. If I hadn't faked that coma, I would have continued living a lie. I would have died eventually, without ever having truly woken up. And that would have been the real tragedy. So instead of regretting, I chose to be grateful. For the truth, however ugly it was. For the opportunity to start over. For every painful moment that had brought me to this instant of peace. That afternoon, when Laura and Sophia arrived with flowers and wine and laughter, I received them with open arms. Not as the woman I used to be, but as the woman I had become. Imperfect, broken in some places, but stronger in the scars. And when we sat down to dinner, when we shared stories and dreams and hopes, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Not to a family defined by blood or marriage or expectations, but to something bigger, to possibility, to the future, to myself. And that night, when they left and I was alone in my apartment by the sea, I didn't feel loneliness. I felt fullness. Because I finally understood the lesson the coma had taught me. Sometimes you have to die to learn to live. Sometimes you have to close your eyes to see clearly. Sometimes you have to pretend to be asleep to finally wake up. And I, after 52 years of living the life others expected of me, had finally awakened to the life I chose for myself. An imperfect life. Uncertain, beautiful in its brutal honesty. A life that was mine. And as I lay down that night, with the sound of the ocean lulling me, I closed my eyes. Not to pretend. Not to hide. But simply to rest. Because tomorrow I would wake up again. And this time it would be real. The end.